All right, let's jump right in. When we think about the very first philosophers back in ancient Greece, the Pre-Socratics, the picture that usually comes to mind is of these guys being the world's first scientists, right? Making these wild guesses about what the world's made of. But what if that whole picture just completely misses the point? Today, we're going to look at these thinkers through a totally different lens.
So, this is the big question we're tackling. Was all their work just a bunch of well-intentioned but, ultimately wrong attempts to explain nature? That's the traditional story, and it's a view that goes way, way back to Aristotle himself. He pretty much framed them as pre-scientific thinkers. But here's the thing. It's not the only way to look at them, and maybe, just maybe, it's not even the best way to understand what they were really up to.
So let's go down a different path here, a less traveled one, to figure out what these incredible minds were actually doing. It's not really about pre-science. It's about something much, much deeper, something way more fundamental to being human. Okay, so here are the two big ideas, side by side. On the one hand, you've got the standard textbook view. These guys were early scientists trying to figure out the natural world. But on the other hand, there's this new view, which suggests their main focus wasn't physics at all. It was ethics. They were exploring this radical idea that the universe itself is a moral place, that justice is literally woven into the fabric of reality.
And that right there brings us to the core concept, the one idea that just unlocks this entire perspective. It's a belief they inherited and then ran with. This belief that the cosmos isn't just neutral, it's actually governed by justice.
The idea is called cosmic justice, and what it means is that the universe basically has a built-in moral compass. It's not chaotic, it's not random, it's an ordered system where justice isn't just some human idea, but a natural law, like gravity, that will always win out in the end. And the philosophers, they weren't just making this up out of nowhere. They were taking this concept that was already swirling around in their culture's great literature and pushing it to its logical conclusion.
For these early Greeks, the world had these three parallel layers, and they all mirrored each other. So you've got the macrocosm, right? The huge, law-governed universe. Then you've got the city-state, their own ordered, law-governed society. And finally, you have the microcosm, the individual's own moral life. For them, the laws of nature, the laws of society, and the laws of morality were all part of one giant interconnected system. It all fit together.
So where did this powerful idea of a moral universe even come from? Well, to get the philosophers, you first have to understand the poets and the playwrights who came before them, the ones who basically shaped their entire world.
You can actually watch this idea evolve through Greek literature. You start with Homer's Iliad, and the gods are, well, they're a mess. They're fickle, they're selfish, they could not care less about human justice. But then, by the time we get to the Odyssey, something shifts. The gods start to take an interest. Then you get to the poet Hesiod, and his Zeus is basically a cosmic cop, actively enforcing justice down here on Earth. And all this builds up to plays like Sophocles' Antigone, which is all about this epic clash between human law and some kind of higher moral law.
This line, it gives me chills. Antigone is staring down a king and telling him, "Your laws are temporary, they're flawed, but there are unwritten, eternal laws of heaven, a universal justice." This is the intellectual air that the pre-Socratic philosophers were breathing. These were the stories they grew up on.
Okay, so with all that context in mind, let's circle back to the philosophers themselves. Because when you see their work as a search for cosmic justice, all of their strange theories suddenly start to click into place. They make so much more sense.
And here it is. This is the smoking gun from one of the earliest philosophers, Anaximander. He's describing natural processes, things coming into being and then fading away. But just listen to the words he's using. Penalty, retribution, injustice. That's the language of a courtroom. He's applying a moral and legal vocabulary to the basic workings of the universe.
And Anaximander was not alone. You see this pattern pop up again and again. Heraclitus talked about the logos, a universal reason or logic that governs all change and creates harmony out of conflict. Then Anaxagoras talked about nous, a sort of cosmic mind that brings order to all the chaos. They all use different words for it, but they were all trying to get at the same thing, this rational, moral principle that runs the entire cosmos.
But, in the history of ideas, for every grand theory of a meaningful, ordered universe, there's always an equally powerful alternative waiting in the wings. What if this whole cosmic justice thing is just wishful thinking? What if there is no inherent meaning? No logos, no cosmic mind, no one pulling the strings?
What if the order we think we see is just a complete and total accident?
And this is where their great intellectual rival, Democritus, steps onto the stage. He offered a totally different vision, a universe made of nothing but tiny atoms swirling around in empty space, governed only by pure necessity and chance. In his world, order isn't designed, it just happens. And morality? That's not some cosmic law. It's just a human invention, a convention. So the only real guide for how to live becomes, well, seeking pleasure and avoiding pain.
So what we're looking at here isn't just some forgotten argument from a history book. This massive clash of worldviews between the philosophers of order and the philosopher of chance, it basically set the stage for one of the most lasting debates in all of human history.
I mean, look at these questions. This early showdown laid out the fundamental arguments that Western philosophy has been wrestling with ever since. Is the universe meaningful, or is it random? Is there a natural moral law, or do we just make up the rules? Should we live for a higher purpose, or just for what feels good? These guys didn't just ask about water, air, and fire. They staked out the core choices for how we understand our world and our place in it.
And so, the question they left us with is still hanging in the air today. Is the world a place of inherent order, meaning, and justice? Or is it all just a product of random chance, where we're left to create our own meaning from scratch? It's a question that is just as urgent today as it was 2,500 years ago. And the way you answer it, well, that kind of defines everything.